Welcome to Bucket List Careers, the podcast. I'm Krista Laurie. Thanks for joining me. This is episode 144, and the first time I'm actually recording a podcast episode in person at this beautiful new studio brought to us by LMC Media. It's called Studio on the Ave in Mamaroneck. And I actually brought back for this special episode a regular contributor, a Larchmont resident, and she's a career coach, Dara Astmann, who specializes in helping women with career transformations. And you have a great career pivot story of your own to share. So I love having you on the show. Welcome back.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
It's really great. And, I'm excited to be doing this across from you instead of Zoom. I know we're going to have an amazing episode. Let's get a refresher for people who may not have heard about your journey yet, because you didn't start out with your coaching business, Dara Astmann Coaching. You came there after a pivot. I think it was 14 or 15 years at Paramount. As an executive, you were successful. You crafted a job share for yourself. Everything was great, but yet you were looking for change. So dial it back for us.
Yeah. I think so many people graduate college and think they know what they want to be. And for me, it was to work in advertising. I worked in advertising for 20 years. Like you said, about 14 of which was at Paramount. And after having children, things sort of changed for me. My priorities changed. The time I had available to devote to my career changed. And I was fortunate enough to be able to work with my company to create a job share, which meant that I was actually sharing a job with someone else. So I worked 3 days a week and she worked 3 days. We overlapped on one day so that we could be present at work, but also present at home. And it allowed me to sort of have that balance that I craved at that time. And we were together for 10 years doing this job share, which was pretty incredible and unique even now, but also back then.
And you were always looking for flexibility in your work. But when did you have that pivotal moment where you said, I think I want to strike out on my own and start coaching?
So I actually started coaching while I was still working at Paramount. And I think that is something that's probably really important for listeners to realize, is that pivots don't have to be one huge change. Sometimes you dip your toe in something and you start before you actually leave your past. So I was fortunate enough to have those 2 extra days that my children suddenly were off to elementary school. So I had the time to sort of think about, what am I going to do to fill these days? And after seeking a career coach myself and doing a lot of reflection, realized this is something that I enjoy, something I felt I would be good at and wanted to bring into my life. So I went to coaching school in 2019 thinking I was going to have so much free time while my kids were in school, and then I was homeschooling.
And then COVID hit. Yes,
yeah.
Of course. Yes. So you were overlapping, which a lot of my guests do. And you had some clients, but then recently, I think it was in the last year, you decided to leave Paramount and you became a founder, Dara Astmann Coaching. So let's talk about that and what your focus is. I mean, I mentioned career transformations for women. Obviously, you've been through it yourself. So why did you feel that was a space you wanted to get into specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I just left my job officially in January. So many people would probably be surprised because I've been up and running for years. But really to be able to go all in and support these women and prove to them that I'm also doing what I say, right?
Yes.
I'm walking the walk, talking the talk. So it's been really great. I think the idea of pivoting is one that is many different dimensions. It's going to be about not just your job and what you're doing, but your family and finances and satisfaction. And there's all these different avenues, and it's taking a leap, and it's, dealing with so many different things that I never even expected. When you told me that I was going to be a coach, I did not think I was going to be sitting here doing a podcast live.
Yes.
There's just things you don't realize that are amazing, but also a little scary.
But you're
and
embracing
exciting. Yeah.
in this new role. And talk about the program that I'm actually in. So full transparency with my audience here, which I'm a proponent of, right? I love this podcast, but I'm also thinking about what I can add to it. And to your point about overlapping, what would work in alignment. And I'm in your career pivot playbook program. You have to say that slowly, but I think I got it.
It's a tongue twister.
So let's talk about the program. I mean, I have to say we're about halfway in, and it is really changing my lens and helping me embrace, I think, the concept of evolution, and also just not be afraid of it. So let's talk about the program.
I love hearing that. That makes me happy.
Well, it's real, yeah.
Yeah. So Career Pivot Playbook is really about the idea of understanding who you are, what you want, what challenges are getting in your way. So we're not starting with interviews and resumes. I tell everybody, put your resumes to the side. This is not about that.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because it's something I actually mentioned to you yesterday. I almost feel like it's when you go out and you start dating and you're looking to find a husband, but you need to almost, or wife,
Yes.
you need to almost be ready with your own self. You need to be confident. You need to know who you are before you can even find that forever person. And I think that really relates to finding your bucket list career, is sort of being who you are, knowing who you are and what you actually want first.
Totally. And I think it's something that, the people who listen to this podcast are looking for change, right? Something isn't working for them currently, so they're listening for inspiring narratives, they're looking for takeaways. But maybe what possibly people don't realize, and you and I have talked about this, is how important mindset shifting is and how that foundation really needs to be there before any kind of real change can happen. So you and I talked about delving into that topic a bit for this episode. So why don't you take it from there, Dara, and tell me why the mindset is such an important thing to focus on first.
Yeah, I think so many women, moms, have these inner challenges, these fears, the imposter syndrome that makes them question so much. And I always say, how are you going to come across as the best person for the job to the hiring manager if you yourself aren't convinced that you're the best person for this job?
Yeah.
So taking a few steps back to really think about, who you are, right? So the first part of the program is really thinking about who you are. What are your strengths? What do you like? If someone asked you, what do you want? Do you even know what you would say? And for many people, they don't. They could tell you all the things they don't want, but knowing what they actually want is harder. And understanding what you value and understanding, by the way, those values and what's important to you could be different than what it was 20 years ago. So I think recognizing who you are today, because we know that many busy moms don't have time to sit down and actually have that time for reflection, and it's so important. And from there, we move into the mindset. And it's the thoughts and that are really going to decide what sort of results you see. You get to choose the thought.
Well, I'm just going to be totally honest. I even feel like in the first few weeks, I was eager to get to the next phase and then found, wait a minute, I have to dial back and do this mindset work before I can even think along those lines. Do you find some of your clients are in this same position where they're already wanting to talk resumes, already wanting to talk LinkedIn or recruiters or networking, maybe too soon?
Yeah, I mean, I do, and I support them wherever they are. But I always say that I think because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're applying for a job that is not exactly what you want. So if you can figure out ahead of time, these are the 3 must-haves. This is what I want, and specifically target the people, target the networking contacts, and go about it specifically instead of trying to fit yourself around a potential job opening. You're going to find much more of what you're looking for.
But what about the people who are fearing insecurity around knowing what they want or insecurity about change? How do you manage that?
Small steps, very small steps. I think, a lot of times people hear pivot and they are scared to even begin that, right? And I think it's important to recognize that pivots could be big and pivots can be small. They don't necessarily have to mean you're completely upheaving your entire life and making a complete change. Maybe it's small pivots in your mindset, within your job, drawing boundaries to create something that makes sense for you. But change is scary. And so I think the smaller the steps, the better. And, one example that I always say is if you came to me and said, I want to run a marathon, and you weren't a runner, if I told you to go run 1 mile, you might say, a mile? That's crazy. And so we would break it down even further. And maybe it's just a matter of going to buy a new pair of running shoes.
Yeah.
And for that feels comfortable. That's something you can do, and you're still moving yourself forward because for so many people, it's either all or nothing, and it often becomes nothing.
But what if you totally can't visualize it? You know what you like to do. And passion is a big part of what you ask us to think about, right? What do you really love? What can be monetized is what we're always concerned about not being able to achieve. So what about those people that just are really having trouble finding the right move?
I think
it's a hard question.
No, you know what?
Not the hardest.
It is. It is hard. And what I would say is it's almost, you need to remove the pressure to find it.
Okay.
And I always encourage my clients to talk to people. Get curious, be a sponge and soak up things.
Totally.
What are your contacts doing? What are their friends doing? What networking events can you attend in your community or online where you can learn about things and meet people? And I think it's amazing how one person can connect you to someone else who can connect you to someone else, and you can learn about jobs you didn't even know exist.
Right. And even if you're not an entrepreneur but want to be one, you can be in the room with them. Don't be afraid to step into that space and just ask questions, right? This is actually a good segue into some of the networking events that you plan in town. And I've been to some. I love the titles. They're always cute. So tell me why those are so effective. I mean, you already touched upon it, but of course, people are also sharing information like, do you need a photographer for an event? You're meeting people that you can collaborate with and, of course, get ideas from. So tell me about the networking events.
Yes. So I partner with Lexi Brine, who's a local real estate agent, and we created this Inc. events. So it's inspiration, networking, and community. And we really felt a need for local women in town to come out and meet different people. And we've created some different events, whether it's panel style or networking groups. And we have people donate some of their own businesses for a raffle. And it's just amazing to hear everybody leave so uplifted, so inspired. And even after the fact, the amount of people who have said that they connected with someone after has been amazing. And I have a local entrepreneur coaching group that I do also, which ties in so nicely to support a lot of these women who are pivoting, come also into this entrepreneur group. And it's amazing to see the connection, the recommendation, and just the ideas that come out of a lot of these events.
And there are different types, right? You've got moms that are coming out of a career pause because they were full-time parenting. And then you've also got people who want to pivot within an industry, but maybe not necessarily leave finance, right? So you're obviously going to be putting these people in different groups together. And in your pivot program, you have these coaching groups. It's not just one-on-one with you. So why do you think that that's so valuable to be on a remote call with other moms that are coming out of a career pause or other women that are just not happy where they are, but not exactly sure where they want to be yet?
I always thought I wanted to do groups, and it's been incredible to see the relationships and the interest that is formed between the people in the group. And it could be two women in totally different places, totally different careers. And I look around and I see everybody kind of nodding and feeling me too, right? Like, yes, thank you for saying that, And I think one of the things we spoke about in one of our groups was that I think resonated for everyone was this idea about the cocktail party. And when you're out with people and people ask you what you do and how it's this identity and the pressure that comes along with that. And it was amazing.
I think I brought that up.
Yes, yes.
It might have been me.
Yes. And I think, things like that really tie so many of women together.
Yeah.
It was an amazing discussion.
Can I tell you something that just happened last night? I went to a great event. Actually, one of my guests collaborated with another guest and had an event in Mamaroneck, a place called Heimat. It's this distillery. This woman who handcrafts these amazing liqueurs. And what we did was we hand-painted glassware. This other guest of mine has that as a business. So we made margarita glasses with paint. We were all talking and collaborating, and it was amazing. And someone asked me about what I do. And, I was super happy to discuss the fact that I had these two women on my show. We talked about bucket list careers. It was great. And then at one point she said, "Is that all you're doing?" And that was fine, right? But don't you think that's the type of thing that you might internalize as, is this not enough? And I thought, I have to bring this up with Dara because I'm okay. I mean, I'm a big girl, and I can, of course, in the moment, I was like, I also have this, and I have a lot. We all have a lot going on.
Right.
But those are the moments that could lead you to be insecure, and you need to overcome them. You need to say, stop. This is enough. What I'm doing is enough. And if it isn't, what am I doing to change it?
Yeah, I hear a lot of that should, which I always try to remove that should. I should be doing more. I should be doing something else. We have to try to remove that from our vocabulary.
Because we're the hardest on ourselves.
Yes.
That's 100% true. Also, within this whole topic of mindset and laying the foundation for change, you talk about understanding your must-haves when looking for a job and being clear before searching. Talk to me about must-haves and what that means.
Yeah, I think, are you willing to commute to the city? And if so, how many days? And you need to be clear on that, because if you find your dream job and they tell you it's 5 days a week in the city, are you going to say, well, I could probably try to make that work, and then I find you 6 months from now completely miserable and in the exact same position?
Yeah.
Must-haves can be financial, they can be flexibility, they can be, there's a lot of different things. And I think it's not just for you, but also for you and your family. So understanding not just what you need, but what your family needs as a whole, and ranking them, because you may not get all of them. But knowing what they are and trying to prioritize what is most important to you and having the clarity on that before you go into the interview and fall in love with your future boss and, want that job so badly, know if you really want the specifics that you may not actually be able to handle.
And also kind of what you know you don't want anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I know my sister does not want to commute into the city anymore. And thankfully, she has a child, a baby, and she's found a flexible situation. But knowing what you don't want really is also, I think, incredibly important.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually had a conversation with a client yesterday who said she went down a path and realized it wasn't what she wanted and felt like maybe it was a waste. And I stopped her and I said, wait, that's not a waste. Knowing what you don't want is getting you closer to what you do want, and that is so important.
Yeah, and it might sound negative, but I think it's really part of the whole process.
It's to be able to eliminate, when in the group, when we work together, we come up with different paths that we explore, and there's multiple paths. And if you get to a point in one of the paths where you realize it's not right for you, that's amazing. You're now getting closer to spend your energy on these two other paths where one might be.
So, Dara, let's wrap with just a couple takeaways from this particular episode. You've been on the show a few times. We know your journey, and it's been really great to witness your success as you're building your second act. Tell me what you want people to take from this conversation and apply.
I really think that knowing that there's an opportunity for a second bucket list career, a next chapter, that doesn't have to feel so heavy. It doesn't have to be a huge pivot. It can be something small. There can be an overlap. Taking that first step is hard, but I think you may not know where it's going to end. But just starting to make that change is what's going to get you there. I did not know I was going to end up here, and it's all the small steps that have gotten me here, and it's been so fulfilling and so worth it. So I think just taking that first small step is really worth it.
Not so daunting. Take a breath, take a first step. I like that. So send everybody online to Dara Astmann Coaching. And of course, you're creating different coaching groups all the time that start at various points throughout the year, right?
Yeah, it's actually been amazing because different people join in, and it takes the pressure off. Not everyone is starting on the same day and feeling like they're behind. Everyone is on their own journey, and you can join when it makes the most sense for you and your journey.
I love it. Dara, thank you so much for being on the show again. I know I'll have you back soon.
This is great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Bucket List Careers. I'm Krista Laurie, your host, and it is such a pleasure to have you listening. Be sure to go to my social media platforms at Bucket List Careers on Instagram, Facebook, or DM me and send me any input on guest ideas, Krista at bucketlistcareerspodcast.com. Until next time, be well.